The first gunshot rolled like thunder across the dry Wyoming hills. Luke Mercer didn't pause. He fired again before the first man even hit the ground. Blood darkened the dust, and for a heartbeat, the only sound was wind slicing through the pines. 12 years of quiet. 12 years of hiding from people and from himself. All of it shattered in one hard moment. He hadn't wanted this. He hadn't asked to step in. But some kinds of wrong don't give a man any choice. The girl, maybe mid-20s, barefoot, bruised, running like the devil was behind her. And maybe he was. Luke saw her eyes. Wild, terrified, not only for herself but for something bigger, someone else. She stumbled into his world like a ghost, naked and bleeding, pressing against his fence like it was the last solid thing left. And now men were coming after her. 4 of them, armed, steady, hunting her like she was property, like she was meat. One of them even called her belongings. That was when Luke knew this wasn't just trouble. This was rot that had sunk deep. The kind people look away from because it's easier. The kind he once turned his back on. But not today. Not again. They say you can live with regret, that time dulls it. But there's a silence you choose and a silence forced on you by the things you let happen. Luke knew both kinds. When he pulled the trigger, it wasn't simply to protect. It was finally answering the question he dodged for over a decade. What kind of man am I if I do nothing? Smoke hung in the warm air as Luke stood on his porch, rifle hot in his hands, and whispered words he hadn't spoken in 12 long years. Not today. If stories like this still matter to you, don't go anywhere, because Luke's only getting started. Not today, he'd said, and maybe this time he meant it. The girl, June, that was all he knew, lay on his old couch now, wrapped in a wool blanket, half-conscious, bruises up and down her back, lips split from sun and thirst, her right ankle blown up like a melon. Luke had no idea what he was doing. 12 years alone had taught him to mend fences and clean fish, not patch up broken people. He poured water into a glass, set it on the wooden crate he used as a coffee table, and watched her breathe, slow, shaky, like even her lungs might turn on her. He hadn't seen eyes like that in a long time. God help him, they looked like Sarah's. Sarah Mercer, age 14, gone without a trace. One summer night, vanished like smoke. The official line said she ran away. The whispers said other things, men with wagons, a scar-faced stranger asking questions too late. That was 12 years ago. And now this girl, June, shows up looking like she crawled out of the same nightmare that swallowed Sarah. Maybe a coincidence, but it didn't sit right. Luke rubbed his face and stared through the window. The dust had settled. Ward's men had pulled back, for now, but they'd return. He felt it in his teeth. And the worst part, he still didn't know what he was facing. Before she passed out, June had breathed a few words. They own me. They own all of us. Luke didn't ask who they were. He already knew the type. He'd heard that tone from veterans who came home broken, from runaways hiding in barn lofts, from folks who no longer trusted the law because the law hadn't done a thing for them. Luke stood, took up the rifle again, and checked the rounds twice. He didn't know what kind of war he was stepping into. He only knew he wasn't stepping away. Just before dawn, June stirred. That half-awake sound people make when they don't know if they're dreaming or dying. She tried to sit, gasped, and grabbed her ribs. Luke moved slowly so he wouldn't scare her. "You're safe," he said. "For now." She looked at him like he was a ghost, then shot a glance toward the windows. Her voice scraped out dry and hoarse. "You shouldn't have helped me." Luke shrugged. Too late. She shut her eyes like she wished she could disappear. Then, very quiet, she said the words that stuck to Luke's chest like bad news. "They're coming for me. They'll kill you too." He didn't ask who. He didn't need to. He asked why. And June told him. Ward wasn't just a rich rancher with a short fuse. He ran something bigger, meaner. A ring, she called it. Girls taken from nowhere places. Towns like hers. Promised work, food, safety, and given none. "They keep us in the old mill west of Shell," she said. 12 girls, maybe more. Last I heard, they're moving us farther west. Somewhere people don't come back from. Luke felt his stomach twist. 12 girls, around Sarah's age back then. June took a breath and added something he'd never forget. One of the girls is Ruth, 14. Says she hasn't seen her mama in 6 months. Ruth. Luke dropped into his old chair like his bones quit. That name tore open the place he'd tried to bury for years. Sarah had a friend named Ruth. They used to braid each other's hair on the porch, eat watermelon till they were sick, talk about leaving this dusty place someday. Now one was gone, and the other might be locked in that mill. Luke rubbed his face again, trying to make sense of it. What if Sarah never ran? What if she was taken like these girls? And if so, how many more disappeared while decent folks stayed quiet? He looked at June. She wasn't just a victim. She was a witness, maybe the only one left. And now she was his to protect. Luke turned his eyes west. No badge. No backup. No idea what waited at the mill. But he had a rifle and a reason. For the first time in 12 years, that was enough. The old mill outside shell looked abandoned. People had believed that for years. Luke knew better now. He left June a note and food for a day, told her to bolt the doors. If you hear hoofbeats, don't answer. Then he saddled up and rode west. The trail was harsh and bone-dry. The heat made his thoughts itch. Buzzards circled low, like they knew what was coming. He reached the ridge by sunset, the sky burning orange behind the canyon wall. Luke lay flat against a sun-warmed rock, peered through a cracked scope, and slowed his breathing. 2 guards stood by the main door. One paced the perimeter with a dog, and a 4th slouched on a chair, spitting tobacco like time didn't matter. Then he saw the back window, barred. Behind the bars, a flicker of movement. A small hand pressed to the pane, hesitant, hopeful. Gone. Someone was in there. No, someone's were. Luke counted his bullets. Not enough to win a fight. Not with those odds. He needed a weakness, a door he could pry open without noise. So he waited. Hours dragged by. Darkness came heavy and slow, the kind of quiet that settles before storm. Just before midnight, something changed. A wagon rumbled in, heavy canvas over the back. 1 driver. 2 riders behind with rifles. They spoke to the guards and backed the wagon into a side entrance. Luke couldn't see the cargo, but he heard soft crying, the kind that slips out when someone is trying not to be heard. His jaw tightened. This was bigger than he'd thought. Organized. Cold. And now that he'd seen it, he could not unsee it. Luke didn't sleep. He stayed hidden and watched the mill like a hawk. Every hour showed him something worse. Men treating people like stock, young girls moved like ghosts, the wagon that never rolled back out. At sunrise, he made his choice. Not because he had a perfect plan. Not because it was safe. Because walking away would turn him back into the man who looked the other way. He rode hard and found Marshall Reed by noon. He told it straight. June, the girls, the wagon, the hand behind the bars. And for once, somebody listened. By nightfall, they had a small team, quiet, armed, not hunting a fight, but ready for one. When they hit the mill, the truth was worse than anyone guessed. 14 girls, some barely more than kids, hungry, scared, but alive. And Ruth was real. Not Sarah's old friend, but someone else's daughter. Someone's baby. Just a child who wanted to go home. Luke lifted her into his arms and carried her out himself. Later people asked why he risked everything. Why now after all these years? Luke said only this, because I remembered who I used to be, and I got tired of running from him. Sometimes the hardest battle isn't with evil men. It's with your own reflection, choosing to be better today than you were yesterday. So here's the question for anyone still listening. If you saw a small hand behind the bars, would you keep walking, or would you stop and make it your fight too? Maybe the world doesn't need more perfect heroes. Maybe it needs more people who refuse to look away. Luke's "not today" didn't end at his porch. Ward's men had scattered when the marshal's team stormed the yard, but words like that don't die. It crawls. Luke kept his rifle cleaned and near, but he kept his promises closer. He checked on June between doctor visits, left bread and soup by her bedside, told her the truth when she asked and kept quiet when she needed silence. She still shook, when doors slammed. She stared at the windows when the wind rose. Healing doesn't sprint, it limps. Luke knew that pace. He wore it for 12 years. The mill stood empty by week's end. Chains cut, windows opened. The smell of fear washed out with lie and sun. Reed's men hauled ledgers, names, routes, proof of more than rumor. For the first time since Sarah vanished, Luke felt the ground under him stop sliding. He walked the hall where the girls had slept and pressed his hand against the cool plank walls. He didn't say a prayer. He didn't have words big enough. He just stood there and promised to stop looking away. He kept thinking of Sarah and the porch and watermelon rinds under bare feet. He pictured Ruth, this new Ruth, sitting with her mama, safe, whole. A thing taken and then returned. Not every story ends like that. He knew. But this one, today, did. The town changed in small ways first. Parents counting heads at dusk, shopkeepers watching the road, ranch hands asking harder questions about whose orders they followed and why. The kind of change you can't nail to a door, but you feel in your chest. June slept, woke, healed, and cried without apology. She told Reed what she remembered: faces, places, the smell of oil at the mill, the creek bend where wagons turned. She didn't want to be brave. She was anyway. Luke fixed a section of fence that had sagged all summer. He mended the porch step Sarah used to skip. He put the old chair back in its corner, oiled the squeaky hinge on the back door, and left the lamp burning low each night. Not because he expected his daughter to walk through. Because he owed the living. News travels slow in countries like this, then all at once. Wagons were stopped farther west. A barn got raided near the pass. A scar-faced man was spotted, then gone again. Reed rode out twice a week. Luke went when asked and stayed when told. He wasn't a deputy. He wasn't trying to be one. He was a man who had finally decided who he was. June stood on the porch one morning, sunlight on her bandaged ankle, a blanket around her shoulders. "You saved me," she said. Luke shook his head. "You saved yourself. I just stopped pretending not to see." She smiled, small, real. "Not today," she said, like she was testing the words. He nodded. "Not today." Some evenings, the hills sounded like they used to. Wind in the pine, coyotes calling far off, nothing else. Other nights, memories clawed at the door. When that happened, Luke counted the names in Reed's ledger and the number of girls who had gone home. He held the truth like a weight he was strong enough to carry now. He had been a man who walked away. He was a man who didn't anymore. Folks later argued about what Luke Mercer did, whether he was a hero, whether he went too far, whether someone else would have done the same. Luke didn't argue. He fed the dog. He fixed the hinge again when it stuck. He stacked wood for winter and taught a kid from town how to sight a rifle without fear. In his hands. When Ruth's mother sent a note, clumsy handwriting, smudged with tears, Luke read it alone at the table. He folded it twice and kept it under the lamp. Not because he needed thanks. Because it reminded him that choices echo, the way a first shot does across dry hills. If you've stayed with this story, take this with you. The world is full of fences to mend and storms to ignore. But sometimes you see a hand behind bars. And when you do, the question is simple and heavy. Do you keep riding or do you stop? Maybe we don't need capes. Maybe we need fewer turnbacks. If this story stirred anything in you, if it made you remember the person you meant to be, don't just swipe past. Hit like. Subscribe. There are more stories ahead, ones that tell us who we were and who we can still become. Not tomorrow. Not someday. Not when it's easy. Not today.